Hey creeps, how's it going? My camera is angled kind of weird, so in order to get the books in here, I'm gonna have to crouch down. Anyway, I am here to do my very much anticipated young adult vintage horror bookshelf tour. So on this entire shelving unit, double layered, I have all of my Fear Street books, my Christopher Pike, Point Horror, and all of my other super rare vintage young adult horror books. When it comes to my Fear Street collection, which is this entire shelf and some of this shelf back here, I have the majority of the books. I am missing a handful. I tend to go after first edition, first printings of all of the books, and I try to get them in as close to mint condition as possible. Books like that tend to be a little bit harder to find, so I'm still trying to accrue my collection, though I have made a lot of progress in the last few months. And speaking of Fear Street, I have one more thing to talk about before I get into the books. I recently did a podcast episode for the Dustin Can Read podcast. Dustin did this big like throwback / parody of the Fear Street series where he did this like radio show, and he had a whole bunch of other creators come through and lend their voices to this script. So I got to play a character. It's going to be a 3-part series. The first part goes up on Friday. So if you're watching this when this video goes up, you only have a couple days to wait. So definitely check that out. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. Enough rambling, let's get into the Fear Street books. I'm gonna take all of these off in the front row so that way we can get to the earlier books. Here is the very first book in the Fear Street series. This is called The New Girl, and this is my first edition, first printing. It's in decent shape. I mean, it's got some wear, there's like a spine crease, and there's a bit of water damage on the actual book itself, just down here. But overall, I'm just really happy to have a first printing of the very first Fear Street book that started it all. Next, we have the second book, which is called The Surprise Party. Nice first edition of that. The Overnight. It's not in the best shape. Definitely has some wear on it, but it's better than nothing. In case you didn't know, I am actually very picky about the condition of my books. Here we have The Sleepwalker, and I've always loved that cover. And I'm actually missing the books that come before this. I'm missing books 4 and 5, which are called Missing, funnily enough, and The Wrong Number. And I actually have Missing, which is included in this book right here. It's a big modern bind up. So I do technically have a copy of that I can read, but I am so actively on the lookout for The Wrong Number. But anyway, yeah, there is The Sleepwalker. Next we have Haunted, The Halloween Party, another one of my very favorite covers and a very good book. One of my favorite Fear Street books that I've read. And I've read quite a few. This one's pretty top notch. A recent acquisition thanks to a friend of mine. I got a first printing of The Stepsister, Ski Weekend, The Fire Game. Next we have another one of my favorite covers. This is the very first Super Chiller, which is called Party Summer. And I have all of my Super Chillers and all of my Fear Street trilogies mixed in with the other books. I like the continuity of the stories, so I like to have them all in publication order. So yeah, there's Party Summer. Another favorite cover, you're gonna hear this a lot. That is Lights Out, just so classic. You've got your cliche redhead, which was a staple of 90s young adult horror. You always had to have a redhead as the main character. Like the main character in the book I'm writing now is a redhead, just to pay tribute to the iconic redhead trope. Again, we have another redhead. This is The Secret Bedroom, another one of my favorite covers of all time. This is Reva Dalby, who is the supreme bitch of Fear Street. If you've ever read Silent Night, you know what I'm talking about. Silent Night is one of my very, very favorite Fear Street books ever. In fact, it's my #1 favorite Fear Street. It's just so good. If you never read any other Fear Street books and you just want to read one, this is it. Read this book. It's fantastic. Next is The Prom Queen, another favorite cover of mine. Goodnight Kiss. This is another super chiller. It's about vampires. Such a good cover. I love it. I've actually never read this one though. I recently finally found a copy of this, so I'm looking forward to giving it a read. Next we have the very first Fear Street trilogy. R.L. Stine was doing a Fear Street trilogy every single year when the series was popular. So we have the Cheerleaders. This is the first evil, the second evil, and the third evil. fantastic trilogy. So good. I would say this is when Fear Street was really at its peak. Now, I actually don't own first printings of these. These are much later printings. I mean, they have the original covers, obviously, but I would love to find nice first printings of these at some point. Next, we have another super chiller. This one's called Broken Hearts. It's kind of a Valentine's Day slasher-ish story. Next, we have The Cheater. This is the very first Fear Street book that I ever bought. I got this exact same copy back when I was 10 years old. I was so happy to be buying my very first Fear Street book because I felt like a big kid finally. I was like, move over, Goosebumps. Cameron's aging up. And of course, I never really did. Sunburn. Another great cover. Now, if you're a big Fear Street fan, you probably noticed that I am missing the knife and I am missing the best friend. Those are two that I'm still looking for. But other than that, I have most of the early Fear Street books. So next up we have one of the best Fear Street trilogies, in my opinion. This is the Fear Street Saga, where R.L. Stine goes back to like the 1800s and talks about the origins of Fear Street and how it became the place that it is today. So we have book 1, The Betrayal, book 2, The Secret, and book 3, The Burning. Next up is Silent Night 2, another super chiller. One of my favorite covers. Again, like I said, you're going to hear that a lot because I love these early Fear Street covers. They're just so good. This is actually a Paperbacks from Hell. If you are a fan of Paperbacks from Hell, you definitely would have seen this in the book. Next up, we have The New Boy, which I read recently, and I actually really enjoyed this. Thought it was a good one. The Dare, another one that I read recently. Bad Dreams, another favorite cover. Has a Valentine's Day kind of look to it. The Thrill Club. This was one of my favorites growing up. And this is one of the few original Fear Street books that R.L. Stine didn't actually write. I think he only wrote the outline for this one. Oh, and the one that came before The Thrill Club is actually called Double Date. I don't own a copy of that. That was actually originally released with these temporary tattoos on the inside, so I'm trying to find a copy that still has those temporary tattoos included. I actually do own a sheet of the tattoos though, that were included in order from Etsy or something. The seller included a free sheet of the tattoos. So that's what they look like. I just need to find a copy of that book that still has them intact. Another super chiller, we have The Dead Lifeguard, One Evil Summer. And I actually bought this book years ago and it came in a set with a wristwatch, and I'm actually gonna grab that. So I actually still have the wristwatch, which is that right there. And this just kind of came in a set together. I really wish I wouldn't have opened it though and just kept it in the packaging because it's super rare to find unpackaged. Oh well, I'm just glad that I still have that amazing wristwatch. Next I have books 1 and 2 in the 99 Fear Street House of Evil trilogy. So I'm still missing the third book, obviously. This one's called The First Horror. This one actually is not a first printing, it's a book club edition, so I'd like to get a first edition of that eventually. This one is The Second Horror, The Mind Reader, The Wrong Number 2. I have The Wrong Number 2, I just don't have the first one. And then for this next super chiller, R.L. Stine returned to the Fear Street Cheerleaders series and gave us one more. This is The New Evil, Truth or Dare, Dead End, Final Grade, Switched, which R.L. Stine has said is his favorite book in the series. Bad Moonlight. This is another super chiller, and again, one of my favorite covers. That is just glorious, a work of art. Next we have College Weekend. The next Fear Street trilogy. This one is called The Cataluna Chronicles, which is pretty much like Christine for teens. So we have The Evil Moon, The Dark Secret, and The Deadly Fire. The Stepsister 2, New Year's Party. This one was pretty fun. What Holly Heard, The Face, Secret Admirer. This one was just recently reprinted in a new edition. The Perfect Date, and this actually features R.L. Stine's son, Matt, and his girlfriend posing on the cover. I just love that. I think it's really cute. I mean, not the stabby murdery part, but just the fact that R.L. Stine got his son and his son's girlfriend to pose for the cover. It's just really cool. The Confession, The Boy Next Door, Goodnight Kiss 2. This is another super chiller with a super holographic shiny cover. We have another trilogy here. This is the Fear Park trilogy. So we have book 1, The First Scream. Book 2, The Loudest Scream. This is actually a book club edition, so I'm gonna need to find a first edition. And then we have book 3, The Last Scream. Night Games. Silent Night 3, Riva Returns. She still doesn't learn her lesson in this one, guys. I'm sorry. And no, the book does not include actual bloodthirsty mannequins. I think they make an appearance in like a dream sequence, but yeah, they don't actually appear in the book for real. The next one is Runaway. I've owned this copy since I was really young, and there's something about the look on her face that always used to creep me out. There's just this look in her eyes. I don't know what it is. Speaking of, this guy also has a really weird look on his face. This one is called All Night Party. It's another book club edition, so I'm gonna have to find a first edition of that one. We're getting toward the end of the original series now. So we have The Rich Girl. A lot of these later books tend to be pretty rare. Next up, we have a two-parter. So we have Fear Hall, the beginning, and Fear Hall, the conclusion. And as you can see, they changed the covers for these books. They then went back to the old design of the books, and then they returned back to this design for the remainder of the series. So it's kind of weird. These two kind of stick out like a sore thumb in my collection. As you can see, they go back to the other design. So here is Who Killed the Homecoming Queen, another book club edition, Into the Dark book club edition. That just bothers me. I don't know why. You can tell if a book is a book club edition if the book isn't embossed on the cover, like usually the Fear Street and R.L. Stine logo would be embossed. And also, if you look on the back here, on the USBN, if it says BC, that stands for book club. Moving on, we have The Best Friend 2. As you can see, they went back to that other design. And the last book that I own from the original series is Cheerleaders, The Evil Lives. Continuing on with the Fear Street books, I have one book from the new Fear Street series. This is book 3. It's called Scream, Jennifer Scream. There were 4 books in this series total, so I need to find those other 3. Next, I have a stack of collector's editions. Later on in the series, they started to go back and reprint the books in these bind-up editions. So we have Goodnight Kiss, which binds up books 1 and 2 of Goodnight Kiss. And there's some really cool step-back cover art included. We also have the collector's edition number 1, The Beginning, which includes The New Girl, The Surprise Party, and The Overnight. So the first 3 books in the series. Collector's edition number 7, Deadly Games. It includes The Fire Game, Night Games, and Truth or Dare. Number 9, Creatures of the Night. This includes Hunted, Bad Moonlight, and Trapped. And the last collector's edition that I own is 99 Fear Street House of Evil, which includes all 3 books in that trilogy. Moving on, I have even more Fear Street to show you. So we have the Fear Street Sagas, which continues off where the Fear Street Saga originally left off. And this went on for, I think, 16 books. So we have Fear Street Sagas, book number 1, A New Fear. Some great cover art for these books by Lisa Falkenstern. Later on in the series, of course, they had to change it up, and they're not quite as good as these early covers. So we have number 2, House of Whispers. Number 3, Forbidden Secrets. Just look at that cover. The Sign of Fear, that's book number 4. Number 5, The Hidden Evil. Number 6, Daughters of Silence. Number 7, Children of Fear. And I'm missing book number 8, but I do have number 9 right here. This is called Heart of the Hunter. All right, moving on to shelf number 2, I have the rest of my Fear Street sagas. So we have book number 10, The Awakening Evil. And I'm missing 11 and 12, but here's book number 13, Faces of Terror. Obviously, the cover art has changed quite a bit. Number 14, One Last Kiss. And that's the last of the Fear Street sagas that I own. I'm still looking for books 15 and 16. Next up is even more Fear Street. So here we have the ultra rare Fear Street Seniors series, which follows the senior class of, I think, 1998 through 1999. So here is number 1, Lit's Party. Number 2, In Too Deep. Number 3, The Thirst. Fight Team Fight. This is number 7, by the way, so I still need to find books 4, 5, and 6. Episode number 8, Sweetheart, Evil Heart. Episode 9, Spring Break. I'm missing book 10, but here's book number 11, Prom Date. And then there is a book 12 called Graduation Day that I still need to get. And the very last Fear Street book that I have to show you is Fear Street Nights. This is the second book in that trilogy. This one's called Midnight Games. Still need to find books 1 and 3. Now, these definitely aren't the only Fear Street books that I own. If you look behind me, I have some of the newer Fear Street books. And then back here, I have the Return to Fear Street series. And then I also have all of the Ghosts of Fear Street, which was a middle grade Fear Street series, much like Goosebumps. I have the majority of those books, and I am going to be doing a big bookshelf tour of all of my middle grade books that aren't Goosebumps, because I already did a big Goosebumps collection video. And in that video, I will be showing all of my Ghosts of Fear Street books, so stay tuned for that. All right, so that is all for part 1 of my vintage young adult bookshelf tour. You can expect to see the next part of this bookshelf tour next Thursday, so make sure you come back for that. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next episode of Library Macabre. Later, creeps.